President Buhari addresses African leaders, stresses need for them to support the renewed fight against corruption on the continent.
Plateau killings, former Inspector General of Police used for peaceful coexistence.
Victims Support Fund empowers insurgency-affected households in the northeast with agricultural inputs.
On Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall look at infrastructure development and national economy.
The Minister of Information and Culture, Alhaji Lai Mohammed, began inspection of critical infrastructure projects being executed by the federal government across the country a few months ago.
Now, the tour kicked off with inspection of the ongoing construction of the Lagos-Ibadan standard gauge rail. And since then, the minister has been crisscrossing the length and breadth of Nigeria, monitoring ongoing projects in various sectors.
Well, these include roads, water, power, housing and bridges, among others. Of particular mention is the second Niger Bridge project, Local Weto Bridge, Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, Enugu-Port Harcourt Expressway, and the Lorry-Ibadan Road project. So what is the level of construction work on these critical national projects? How will they impact on the nation's economy? The projects being executed in line with contractual agreements? And are the contractors going to deliver on schedule? These are some of the questions that we intend to put to our guests as we discuss the infrastructural development and Nigeria's economy. Thanks for joining us on the first edition of Good Morning Nigeria for the week. I am Kirian Umayo, and we are broadcasting from Abuja, the capital of Nigeria, on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority.
And I'm Rhoda, and I'm saying a very big thank you to you for joining us on the program for this week. Of course, it's the very first for this week. And Kieran, apart from this, we shall also be discussing the 15th International Maritime Seminar scheduled to begin tomorrow in Abuja. But as always, you know, we have our regular companion segments, and that includes the newspaper review, business, sports, foreign, and entertainment news. But as always, the news comes first. And Claire Delabu Abdurazak is here to give us the news highlights this morning. Claire, good morning. Looking good as always.
Thank you, Rhoda, and of course, Kieran. Good to see both of you. Let's begin with the news, and we go to the AU summit in Mauritania, where the African Union has condemned the recent violent attacks in Nigeria and other countries on the continent, promising necessary support in the pursuit of peace and security. Now, the African Union chairman and president of Rwanda, Paul Kagame, stated this at the opening of the 31st ordinary session of the Assembly of Heads of States and Government in Nouakchott.
As a union, we stand with the peoples of Ethiopia, Nigeria, and others who have suffered recent terrorist attacks, and we are with you all in your pursuit of peaceful coexistence and changes in your respective countries. We condemn these violent attacks and convey condolences for the lives that have been lost. The spirit of solidarity binds us together as Africans.
And President Muhammadu Buhari has reaffirmed Nigeria's abiding commitment towards leading the way in the renewed fight against corruption in Africa, which he described as one of the greatest evils of all time. Declaring open a debate on combating corruption at the AU summit, the president said the unwavering support of the leaders is critical towards amplifying and deepening the anti-corruption agenda of the AU.
As we continue to commemorate the African Anti-Corruption Year the scourge of illicit financial flows continues to bite, eating back the gains and militating against the attainment of our aspirations under Agenda 2063 and the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations 2030 Agenda. We must all collectively work to place high on the agenda the need for open and participatory government, as well as the repatriation of stolen assets without procedural technicalities and legal obstacles.
And back home, embracing the sense of brotherhood for the unity of the country by all strata of the society has become imperatives of the time, especially now that the Buhari administration is attaining success in curbing insurgents in the country. Now, against the backdrop of the recent crisis in Plateau State, which resulted in loss of lives, former Inspector General of Police Muhammadu Gambo Jumeta says that such pockets of killing among Nigerians of the same country cannot be allowed to continue.
It's meant for everybody. This country is supposed to be organic and peaceful coexistence, as you say. Everybody knows his role. And the various departments of government, ministries of government, and of course the governor himself and his deputy, and then his commissioners. These are all people factored in our system to look after, to be nearest to the people and look after their daily needs and concerns.
While the British Broadcasting Corporation BBC says fake news is fueling header crisis in Nigeria through social media, the BBC also claimed that some news outlets are equally guilty of the fake news. Many of the stories being circulated and which fuel anger, according to the news outlet, are unrelated to the headers crisis. The news outlet highlighted what it calls instances in which fake news has been used to fool Nigerians, leading to mayhem. The British Broadcasting Corporation BBC said most pictures and visuals circulating on the social media are fake, which unsuspectingly can't simply pass without verification. And 400 households in the insurgency-affected areas in Adamawa, Borno, and Yobe states are to benefit from the agricultural input support under the rain-fed farming intervention of the Victims Support Fund. The official flag-off of the program in Madagali local government area of Adamawa State is to facilitate the restoration of livelihood of the people through economic empowerment of households in the northeast.
People should not eat these seedlings. They are seedlings meant for farming.
To support the stabilization of your life and to restore pride, dignity, and prosperity to you, your family, and your neighborhood.
And finally, the Nigerian Bar Association has urged legal practitioners to leverage on the upcoming annual conference of the association to ensure the success of the 2019 general elections. President of the association, Abubakar Mahmoud, senior advocate of Nigeria, made a plea while briefing newsmen on the theme of the conference: transition, transmission, and sustainable institutions.
Many of you are aware, has become pivotal national event and contributing to shaping discourse on key national issues in line with our constitutional mandate. And we intend to continue that tradition to make it an excellent platform, not just for lawyers, but indeed for all thought leaders and for all groups around the country and around the continent.
The senior advocate said the conference will give legal practitioners the opportunity to x-ray contemporary issues affecting the country in order to come up with sustainable solutions. And those are the thrilling morning news. I'll be back at 10 with news at 10. But for now, stand by. Rhoda and Kieran will be back after the break.
unemployment, notably youth unemployment, features strongly in our party's manifesto. We intend to attack the problem promptly through revival of agriculture.
The 30K is going a long way. Actually, I bought an acre of land for 60K like 2012, and presently I have a cassava farm and a yam farm.
Reorganized, trained, and fully equipped, we are the new improved Nigeria Police Force. We fight crime, we bust syndicates. Whatever the crime, wherever the hideout, the Nigeria Police Force will get you busted. Stop kidnapping, armed robbery, murder, pipeline vandalism, and other criminal activities. Be productive. Be security conscious. Join the police force to secure your life and property. This message is from the Nigeria Police Force Public Relations Department.
The Nigerian broadcast sector is evolving. Operators, including cameramen and photographers, require new skills and techniques to churn out world-class productions. A unique opportunity is open to all. NTA TV College Jos is organizing a 4-week intensive short course in camera operation techniques aimed at enhancing the professional skills of cameramen and photographers, practicing and freshers. Date 16th July to 10th August 2018. Another 4-week intensive short course in photojournalism and photography holds 13th August to 7th September 2018. Venue for both courses is the TV College premises, NTA TV College, Rayfield, Jos. Fee 100,000 naira per participant. Accommodation inclusive. For more inquiries, contact us on 0806 980 9807 and 0703 660 7155. TV College, Jos. Training you to be the best you want to be.
You're welcome back, and you're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the NTA. Now, in the world of business, Central Bank of Nigeria issues a 3-day ultimatum to commercial banks to resolve disputes of unstructured supplementary service data channel. Let's join Comfort Amodu for more details of this and more in the world of business.
A warm welcome to Business News. Now, the Central Bank of Nigeria has directed all commercial banks to resolve disputes arising from use of unstructured supplementary service data channel within 3 days. Director Banking and Payment System Department, Central Bank of Nigeria, Mr. Dikbo Fatokun, issued the directive at its executive meeting in Lagos. He said the resolution would help build more confidence in the payment system and bring more people into the financial services net. The director said the maximum USSD transaction limit remains 1,000 naira per customer daily, adding that customers will require insurance for any amount higher than that. Still on CBN, the Central Bank of Nigeria sustained its intervention in the foreign exchange market with an additional $318.73 million over the weekend to boost the retail segment of the market. The CBN Acting Director Corporate Communications, Isaac Okorafo, maintained that the added funds was for companies in the raw materials, agricultural, airline and petroleum industries, noting that the Apex Bank is committed to ensuring that all sectors have access to the foreign exchange for their business. And now to other development. The World Bank has approved a total of $2.1 billion in concessionary loans to fund projects in Nigeria aimed at improving access to electricity and promoting governance. According to Reuters, the projects approved by the International Development Association, the bank's low-interest arm, are expected to support Nigeria's economic recovery growth plan. The World Bank said more than half of the loans would be used to fund power and climate change projects and boost fiscal transparency. It also approved a $7 million grant for nutrition. With that, we conclude Business News. I'm Comfort Samodu. Many thanks.
Thank you, Comfort. And good morning, Nigeria. Up ahead is a newspaper review.
To give more depth to our analysis this morning is our regular newspaper reviewer, Bayo Atoibi. Bayo, good morning.
Morning, Rhoda. Good morning.
Hope you had a great weekend.
Good morning, Nigeria. Yes. Surprises?
Upsets, the World Cup.
Yes, it's a World Cup of upsets.
the big ones are leaving.
That makes World Cup interesting.
Yes.
All right, we have a couple of papers here with us this morning, but we'll begin with The Guardian. On The Guardian, we'll begin with the lead story. It says pressure mounts on Buhari to sack security chiefs. Pressure mounts on Buhari to sack security chiefs, with three riders there. Rights group may take president to ICJ. 4 killed in fresh Plateau herdsmen attack, and 32 terrorists surrender to troops in Borno. That's the lead story for The Guardian. Let's quickly move over to the lead story for The Punch. It says killings without state police will risk more attacks, says Ekorimadu. That's on page 11 and 58. With riders there, 6 more suspects arrested for Plateau massacre. All right, Kieran, let's see what you have.
On the Daily Sun, the main headline this morning is the 2019 polls. NPDP weighs options, with the rider may resume talks with APC as members move to take final decision. And on the Nigerian Tribune, the main headline is also on the 2019 elections. Now, INEC probes attempt to clone PVCs and to sell them also online. It's on page 2, and that's the main title, the main headline on Nigerian Tribune. Bayo.
Yes, indeed, the Independent National Electoral Commission has indicated that it is going through a process of reconfiguration of its system in preparation for 2019 election. There have been indications about persons who are attempting to clone PVC purposely to defraud or undermine the election, and INEC is ensuring that it wants to reconfigure its system to make sure that such initiatives comes to null. Meanwhile, the issue of pressure that has been reported mounted on President Buhari was expressed by 2 personalities. The Senate President, while visiting persons whose homes were destroyed by a rainstorm, was also lamenting about the security situation. He specifically said that there is no need retaining security chiefs who are not providing results. He indicated that during a summit they had with the security chiefs, there were indications that there were no coordination between the security chiefs. A is not talking to B, B is not talking to C. And when there is no coordination, it is very difficult for people to achieve success, particularly if they have to fight an evil collectively. Another personality who has spoken strongly on this again is the governor of Sokoto State, Aminu Waziri Tambuwal. He also expressed concern that there is no need retaining security chiefs if the purposes for which they have been positioned, they are not giving us the results. He said killings have continued unabatedly, and Nigerians cannot just wait and watch while the citizens are being killed. Something has to be done to re-engineer the security substructure so as not to undermine the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari.
It would be quite surprising to many Nigerians if there is no synergy, between the armed forces, because the primary objective of having Air Force, Army, and all of that is to bring ideas, have a common focus, because of course the front is one front. We're fighting terrorism, right? And Nigerians will not really understand why there's lack of synergy. It's a big question.
Yeah, that observation was made by the Senate president, and it came from the security. You know, the Senate specifically, because of concern about the security challenges across the nation, occasioned a security summit, and these are some of the revelations that came from there.
All right, Bayo, let's quickly move over to The Nation now. On the news, on The Nation newspaper would begin just below the nameplate there. It says Ekiti 2018, more PDP members defect to APC, DA candidates to invest in solid minerals. And the lead story on The Nation today says Plateau, 10 die, 4 suspects held as gunmen strike again. With riders there, troops move base, how to end killings by ex-IG and others, and then state police bill coming. Those are the stories leading on the front page of The Nation this morning. I'd like us to quickly move over now to... Okay, on the foot of the paper of The Nation, I'd like to quickly take that. That's on the foot of the paper of The Nation. It says, Atiku visits IBB in Mina. It's on page 43. And then NNPC workers write Buhari over slavery abuse. NNPC workers write Buhari over slavery abuse. It's on page 11, Bio.
Yes. Let's start with the NNPC thing. Staff of the Warri Petrochemical Refinery, that of Port Harcourt and Kaduna, have cried out that they are working hard to ensure that petrol supply get across to the nation. However, they are being paid slave wages, and that's why they are crying out. And their contention is that for years they have worked for the NNPC, and their employment are yet to be regularized. And that is the essence for which they are claiming that they are living in this kind of slave employment within the NNPC substructure. The other issue is, sadly, again in Plateau, some papers are reporting 6 killed, others are reporting 10. However, some persons have been arrested. The Anglican primate, I think, Nicholas Oku, while expressing his view at a ceremony in Ijebu-Igbo, advised that an end should be put to cattle rustling as well as an end to killing of persons. He says there's no justification for a provocation to rustle cattle, and there's no ground to justify killing human beings from cows. However, the government needs to take the initiative to address these challenges seriously before it undermines our integrity and unity as a nation.
All right, let's go to Nigerian Tribune now and get that stories making headlines there. Below the nameplate, we have a looters trial. Special courts determine 336 cases in 6 months with 2 riders, 62 others for judgment. NJC panel submit interim report. The story is on page 9. Mayor Tiala prefers solution to farmers' headers clashes. Says we don't believe in reprisals. That's on page 31 of the Tribune. Now, NPDP to make position known this week, says Baraje on page 7. Now, the photograph on the Nigerian Tribune shows President Muhammadu Buhari with, of course, the former Minister of Finance, Ms. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, at the 31st African Union AU Summit in Mauritania, and that was yesterday. And on the side of those of the photograph, we have why we sued Fayemi over APC candidacy, Shegu Oni's group. That's on page 8. Set up to Buhari, don't share $332 million Abacha loot among households on page 31. Atiku in 3-hour visit to IBB with a rider Abuja George visits Obasanjo too. That's on page 10. Then French President Macron visits Fela Shrine tomorrow. It's on page 9. Now, at the foot of the Nigerian Tribune, as Lagos releases report on Otedola bridge accident, ill-fated tanker, originally designed as a drilling rig, and there were some riders here, carried 30 tons, twice above its designed capacity, changed ownership 13 times. As government restricts tankers to designated routes, gives 30-day ultimatum to obtain roadworthiness, explains why fuel tankers can't be restricted to night movement alone. That's on page 2 the Nigerian Tribune.
Well, I'd like us to quickly take a quick look at the Punch. The Punch, it says just above the nameplate, it says French president to visit Buhari and visit African shrine. That's on page 6. Federal governments and states, local governments share 8.9 trillion naira in 16 months. All right, Bayo, let's quickly take a look at these stories.
Yes, you recall that the fire last Thursday was what ravaged 54 vehicles. Unfortunately, we lost 9 persons, and the Commissioner for Transportation in Lagos State has identified that human error as well as vehicular defects were responsible for that tanker that tipped over and spilled the petrol, which engulfed, which broke out into a flame. And he says measures have now been taken to eliminate such developments. He says henceforth there's going to be a restriction of movements of tanker or trailer route in and out of Lagos. The route is now from Apapa, Oroshoki Expressway via Ogudu to Lagos Ibadan Expressway. He says henceforth tankers that are coming into Lagos are to obtain what he described as transportation certificate of roadworthiness within 30 days. When new centers are also to be established along the Lagos Expressway to ensure that tankers, before they get into Lagos, will be certified fit for movement on the highway. He said the tanker that was involved in that accident was bought and registered in Kano, but since it is purchased, it has changed hands 13 times. And you revealed there that it was actually meant to be used for a rig before they converted to a tanker.
Yeah,
the danger, however, with roadworthiness is that sometimes you pay the fee for roadworthiness and they just issue you paper and you go away. Nobody takes the pains to say go over the rig, let them go under the vehicle, check and to ensure that the vehicle
was converted. There must have been some construction work, you know.
But I would say that the vehicle inspection authorities do not have those facilities, because there's particularly one along the Kobo axis where I've been there, my vehicle has been inspected, that's why I'm saying so, and they did a thorough investigation. So the facilities are there, but whether, you know, they would take time to actually go through the trucks, but then I know that the facilities are there.
Yes, if you go back to history, the functions of the vehicle inspection officer has always been in the Ministry of Works, because it's the engineering department that is responsible for it. The whole idea is that when you go there, they have a workshop, there is a pit for which the vehicle should go over, and they are supposed to check. But what has happened over the years is that sometimes you pay the money, you get the receipt, and such thorough checks are not done. This is it.
All right, Bayo, let's quickly take a look at the editorial. Editorial for today is on the New Telegraph. It's on page 15. It says that's university education and high tuition fees. I'll just take a section of it, and that's the first paragraph. It says, one of the problems in Nigeria's higher institution today is the cost of acquiring university education. It is steadily being priced out of the reach of the children from poor economic backgrounds. Mostly affected our state-owned university, which their proprietors have turned into money-making enterprises at the expense of the students.
Well, before we talk about the editorial, let me quickly talk about this interesting story. A Boko Haram member who has surrendered in Cameroon and is now with the military in Maiduguri says that he can make Shekau and 137 others surrender. He says his name is Rahama Goni, he's 32. He said he joined the insurgency when he ran away from Bama, his home, when it was attacked. He went to Cameroon and only found himself in the insurgency. He says that he had long mooted the idea of surrendering, and his colleagues in the insurgency said, if you surrender, you will be killed. And now that he has surrendered, he has not been killed. He said if he's allowed to put a phone call to Shekau and the others, he believes that if that fear of being killed, if they surrender is eliminated, then the war can come to an end. Now the editorial. The issue of university education and high cost has been raging for a long time. You recall that federal government has a policy of tuition-free university education. However, under the guise of other ancillary charges, several universities have increased their fees. Of recent, some universities even demonstrated where students were lamenting that issues for which they were paying in the range of 20 to 30,000 have now been surcharged and increased to over 110,000. And this is making their access to education very difficult. If the policy of government to make education available to all is not to be frustrated, then higher university school fees should be discouraged.
And the worst case scenario, can be found in private universities. As a matter of fact, the school fees skyrocket. As a matter of fact, every year there's an increase. There's an addition in most of the private schools. But does it mean that the federal government has left the proprietors of such schools, the wills and capacities to do anything they like with respect to fees? Because it is still Nigerians that are schooling in those schools. What can be done?
Well, the National University Commission is the supervisor of the universities. However, the federal government has sole responsibility for its own universities, and that is why it has its policy of tuition free. The whole idea is to make sure that the cardinal essence of education, which is tuition, is not an encumbrance to education. Well, when that has been done, other ancillary services is left within the auspices of the universities. But for private universities, government, I don't think, has anything to do about that.
A lot of times when we've had this issue discussed on the program, I always, had to defer on this issue because, the cost of education is expensive.
Yes.
Because when we paid 20,000, 15,000 to go to school, you just had about 15, 20 people in a class. But now the population is more. We're about 90 point something million people. You have in a class, you could have 200 and something people, and so the tuition cannot remain at what it used to be.
Tuition is free, but if I'm to go by your argument, it's the economies of scale, where you had fewer people and you were paying less.
Yes.
Now you have so many people. If you pay less, it means the quantity of the population, higher population, will account for the high cost that we are afraid of. The point to make is that universities themselves, yes, have challenges.
Of course.
They depend on federal government allocation for their activities. However, some universities on their own use their research facilities and some of the inventions they have created, and they associate with other commercial institutes, and that's how they get funded. Abroad, that is what happens.
Right, the main issue is that the institutions are not using their research base to source for funds. That's just it, Okay.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. It's the very first for this week, and we hope we'll see you again tomorrow morning.
All right, then.
All right, we'll take a short break now, and when we come back, we have a very special guest with us this morning to actually, look at our conversation this morning to actually give us more depth into the infrastructural development and, of course, the national economy under this Buhari-led administration. We'll be back in just a moment.
Hate speech is not a joke. It incites genocide and crimes against humanity. Most of Africa's civil wars are caused by hate speech from one tribe against another. We don't want it here. The Nigerian government stands firm against hate speech.
Under no conditions whatsoever should we tolerate or excuse or justify hate speech or hateful conduct of any kind, especially where such is illegal.
There is no doubt that the resurgent push for separatism, as well as the rising cases of ethnic and religious disharmony, are all traceable to the growing phenomenon of hate speech.
One nation bound in freedom, peace and unity.
Nigeria, one nation, one people.
This is a public service announcement brought to you by NTA.
Brought us as usual.
As usual. You have no problem.
For the three
You are welcome, sir.
As usual, yeah?
You take that one. You take that one. You don't understand? We want Nigerian homegrown rice. Finish. You don't have? You don't have?
Join the rice revolution today.
No other rice that tastes like Nigerian rice.
Are you sorry? That's the Nigerian rice we are talking about.
Chocolate made in Nigerian rice. Healthy food.
I'm going to bring Mrs. Mobu to come to chocolate rice of made in Nigeria here and see how it are made.
Correct.
And how they are cook it.
Correct.
Homegrown rice are good for your health. It boosts our economy and give employment to our people.
This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Now, since it came into power, the President Muhammadu Buhari-led administration has left no one in doubt about its determination to pursue its three cardinal agenda of growing the economy, fighting corruption, and tackling insecurity. However, for these successes to make any meaningful impact, infrastructure development is key, hence the massive investment in that regard. Anthony Fonsing is our guide.
From the north to south, east to west, moving down to the south-south and cutting through the north-central. Then, moving up to the northeast, massive infrastructure work adorned the Nigerian landscape. While some have been completed and commissioned, others are at different advanced stages. For instance, the Abuja-Kaduna standard gauge train, which is fully functional, has eased transport problem commuters go through.
I want to appreciate the federal government, even for nothing, for this rail they've given unto us.
And I hope they will extend it up to Katsina State.
The completion of abandoned three key water projects in Katsina is another signpost.
This administration is delivering on its promises to ensure better life for all Nigerians.
Then the completion of the desilting, channelization and deflooding project in Osun State, an ecological fund project, just to mention a few. Against this background, Information and Culture Minister Lai Mohammed has been touring the country, assessing the scope of work going on. The minister, in company of his transportation counterpart, inspected the lane of tracks at the Papalanto end of the Lagos-Ibadan standard gauge train project, where work is going on steadily. The minister was also at the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. The Oyo-Osogbo Road is moving without hitches, a dualization project which was awarded in 2010 but was stalled until the present administration came to inject life into it. The second Niger Bridge is a project the present administration is pursuing to ensure it is delivered. While the Enugu-Port Harcourt dual carriageway project is moving with ease, a move made possible by the timely release of funds.
As at 2015, the only amount given to this contractor was only 100 million naira. With that, they couldn't start. The new government came in, and the first budget of the new government was in 2016. Funding started in earnest. So by 2016, the contractor had to come to site because government was able to fund the advance. As I speak with you today, the advance payment of 4.08 billion has fully been paid by this government.
With the President Muhammadu Buhari's firm belief that his administration is determined to see to the well-being of the people, hence the investment of over 2 trillion naira in 2 years in the sector.
We are able to show and we are able to see for ourselves that some people are just simply bent on misinforming the populace. But I'm glad from the feedback I've had that the people in the South East and South, they know what is being done because they were here for 16 years. They've been here in the last 3 years and they've seen the difference. It's really, really disturbing and disheartening that otherwise responsible politicians come out and make statements which they know is false.
Thank you very much, Anthony Forsing, for that background report on ongoing infrastructure development. And indeed, it's always our pleasure to have in our studios to discuss this the Honorable Minister of Information and Culture, Alhaji Lai Mohammed. Honorable Minister, it's a pleasure to have you join us this morning.
Thank you, Rhoda. Good morning.
And of course, we have with us a regular Good Morning Nigeria also, Comrade Saremu, the General Secretary, National Union of Textile and Garment Workers of Nigeria. He's also a member of the National Executive Committee NEC of the Nigerian Labour Congress, that's the NLC, and also the Vice President of the Industrial Global Union. Comrade Saremu, it's a pleasure to have you once again.
Well, good morning, Rhoda, and through you, good morning, all Nigerians.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. Honourable Minister, as a matter of fact, Nigerians have been told, time without number, that the present administration is embarking on critical infrastructure across the nation. Now, what informed your decision to really embark on inspection tour of those critical infrastructure across the nation?
I think I was motivated largely by the fact that this government has invested so much in infrastructure and very little had been heard about this investment. So I decided that I needed to embark on a physical tour of all this, of the infrastructure. And I kick-started my tour on 8th of May with a visit in the company of the Honorable Minister of Transportation, Mr. Maritime, to the 156-kilometer new gauge railroad between Lagos and Ibadan. That visit took us to Papalanto in Ogun State, which is the site and the fabrication factory of the CCCGE, which is the contractor handling the project. But before I go really into details of these visits, I think it's very instructive to let Nigerians know that this administration has invested over 2.7 trillion naira in the last 2 years in infrastructure, in roads, in railway, in water projects, power projects. And this is actually unprecedented in the history of this country. Now, not only has the government invested, so much in these, infrastructural projects, the government has also made it a point that there will be value for money, and that every penny invested in this infrastructure would be accounted for, and that is actually what took us starting from the 8th of May, first to Papalanto. And what really excited me in Papalanto is the fact that at the time we got to Papalanto, about 1.7 kilometers of the standard gauge road had been completed, and from May 8th today, I'm made to believe that every day 1.2 kilometer is being is being made. That is just using one machine. The contractor promised that they would use the second machine at their disposal, and which means that there will be capacity to do 2.4 kilometers of railroad in a day. Don't forget that the Lagos Ibadan standard gauge is part of the larger Lagos Kano standard gauge road. This is without forgetting that the 3,500 kilometers network of the narrow gauge road is also being rehabilitated. Only in April, the Minister of Transportation signed an interim concession agreement, the national consortium led by the General Electric in Washington, in which they intend to, within the next 12 months, rehabilitate the 3,500 kilometers of the old gauge rail. And the impact of that is that in the next 12 months, we're going to witness a reduced travel time between Lagos and Kano, and at the same time, for the first time in decades, scheduled freights and contracted and scheduled freights will now be available to our businessmen and women. That is in the area of railway. I moved immediately to inspect the Lagos Ibadan Expressway. You would remember that this was a contract. It was a contract which we inherited. I made a lot of controversies, including court action. But the good story is that when we went to inspect this project in May, we started with the Ibadan-Shagamu end axis, and we have been informed, we saw ourselves at 58% of the contract has been completed. This is due largely to the funding that was provided by the government. The Lagos-Ibadan axis of it is also about 53% completed. About 22 kilometers of the asphalt has been made. The interchange, at the Redeemed Christian Church of God is also commencing. They had to change the design because of the volume of traffic that that would be taken by that interchange. And after which we now also proceeded to the Obumasho-Oyo, section of the Ibadan-Ilorin expressway. This was a contract that was awarded in 2010, but due to non-funding and neglect, nothing happened until we came in again. And I'm proud to say that this part of the, we've been using part of this, we're funding this with the Sukuk bond, which we took. You remember that sometimes last year, we floated the 100 billion Sukuk bond for infrastructure, and this Sukuk bond, 100 billion, was divided into 16.6 billion, naira to each of the 6 geopolitical zones. And I will say today, as we speak today, 25 critical roads are being funded by this Sukuk bond. In the area of power, the government has raised the power generation from a mere 5,000 to about 7,000, megawatts. It's also done what we call the transmission expansion and the rehabilitation, which has improved our grid from 5,000 to 7,125 25 megawatts. And at the same time, the Federal Reserve Council just approved the distribution expansion program so that we can have better distribution. In the area of water, irrigation, the government is also doing a lot. I was with the Honorable Minister of Water Resources last month. We were in Sapke, we were in Sapke, we were in Mashi, and we were in Dutsi to commission water irrigation projects. So we are proud and that we have really been able to invest massively in infrastructure, and we can see the result in terms of the comfort it brought to the people. Like you remember, just last week I was also at the Second Niger Bridge, where I went to inspect the progress so far made. You remember also that this contract was awarded in 2014, I think March 10, if I remember correctly, but there was no traction until about 2017, when we provided the first, about 2 billion naira, to mobilize the contractors. By the time we got there last week, already about 310 of the piles, we need about 620 piles for the bridge. About 310 have been sunk. The bridge itself is about 1.95 kilometers, but the entire road is about 12 kilometers, both on the Onitsha and the Asaba end of the bridge. But we were there and we saw the massive work going on there, and the contractor, Julius Berger, has promised that they can deliver within the next 2 years. Reclamation has taken place in on the approach road to a height of 5 meters. Though the objective is to raise the reclamation to 7 meters. And then same last week also, we inspected the 240-kilometer road that is between Enugu and Porakot, which is actually broken into 4 almost equal sections. The first section is actually from Enugu to Longpata, which is 61-kilometer stretch. The next is Longpata to Umahia Tower. The third is from Umahia Tower to Aba, and the last is from Aba to Borakot. And we saw in a lot of, we were encouraged by the level of work that has gone on. The Enugu Longpata section, which is a 61-kilometer stretch, was being handled by the CGC, and so far they have been able to do about 34% of the contract. They've been paid so far about 7.8 billion out of about 32 billion, which is the worth of the contract. Again, the Sukuk bond and the normal funding has been used to ensure that the contractor does not suffer from any funding. But the important thing was that even though this contract was awarded way back about 2013, they were not even paid any mobilization until we came in. As a matter of fact, they were paid just 100 million naira. And with 100 million naira, they could not mobilize. It was this administration in 2016 that gave them, I think, the first tranche of about 4 billion naira. After which we added another Sukuk bond of 3.7 billion naira to make almost about 7.8 billion naira. And then also between the second tranche is between Longpata and Umahia Tower is being handled by Setraco. Setraco too has, I think achieved almost 31 kilometers of asphalt. And they are also building, I believe they're building 2 trailer parks at both ends so that the cattle market at the end of Umahia, at the Umahia end and Longpata end can be accommodated. We also visited the 400 metric ton per day asphalt plant of Setraco, of CGC, and we were very impressed at the level of work. The only constraint they all mentioned was the issue of the weather. During rains, and there's a lot of rain in the southeast and south. You cannot do the heavy. You can do the heavier, asphalting. So what they're doing now is stockpiling and then doing light work for asphalt. The section which really excited me most, I think, is the section between Umahia and Aba, which is about, I think about 61 kilometers or so, because for a long time until we came in, a section of that road had been abandoned, completely taken over by refuse. Until I think it's the Arab contractor that is handling that section of the road. Again, we went there and we were quite, impressed by the level of work. They've done worth about 18 billion naira. We owe them about 5 billion naira, and this has been looked into. And the last stretch is the Aba Borakot end, which is about 41 kilometers. Already 34 kilometers of that has been sandfilled. 1 kilometer has been asphalted. But because we need a lot of relocation on that end, we need to relocate the services, power and drainage, especially because the government had to do a redesign of that road. It was supposed to be a 2-lane dual carriageway, but given the amount of traffic at both Aba and Borakot end, federal government said that it needed to tweak the design a bit so that we have a 4-lane each way, 10 kilometers into Borakot and 4 kilometers into Aba, and this is what has actually led to a bit of delay, because when you are going to you are going to relocate services, you have to also pay compensation. But I'm quite satisfied with the level of work that has been going on in those areas.
Yeah, indeed, it's impressive, and you seem very impressed with the level of work, and indeed, it's 2.7 trillion naira in the last 3 years. It's very, very unprecedented. But then, if there's one area we have challenged when it comes to infrastructure, it's the quality. How impressed are you with the quality of work being done?
I think the everywhere I've been to, given the quality of work has been very, very impressive. And I will talk in particular you see, the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, for the first time, a special type of asphalt, which is capable of extending the lifespan of the road to 20 years, is being used.
Wow.
And not only that, it's a special brand of asphalt that is capable of, preventing the caving in of the road as a result of the heavy vehicular traffic. Now, everywhere we've gone to, and we've gone about 8 places, the contractors have been people with proven track record. And that's Cetraco, Arab Contractor, Julius Berger, CGC, or CCGE. And everywhere we've been to, we've been very, very impressed about the quality of work so far.
All right. Thank you very much indeed. Let's say we're to Comrade Aremu of the National Union of Textile and Garment Workers of Nigeria. I wonder whether this infrastructure is getting to that subsector of the national economy. But all the same, how impressed are you with what the minister has already posited with respect to what the government is doing with regards to infrastructure development, which has been lacking in this nation for decades?
Well, let me first of all say that I'm quite impressed that the NTA has created a platform for reflection on the state of infrastructure. And I think this is the way it should be. I think the media, as much as possible, we need to focus on the issue of development, because when you pick the news flight, it's as if nothing is working. It's as if we're in a permanent state of despair, violence. Of course, there are a couple of challenges, but it's important that we mainstream issues of progress being made. Of course, as they say, the devil is in the details. Although in this case, I think it's more of the godliness in the details. And listening to the minister, the honorable minister, in fact, the point I was saying that the mastery of the minister of the details of kilometers of road, of job done, it could very well be Minister of Road Development, put it that way. But on the more serious note, what I find very interesting about the current dispensation is that if you look at the Economic Recovery Growth Plan, which I think was launched by the President 2017 February, what I find very new and novel is that infrastructural development is one of the critical success factors that was identified. And I think that's very important, because if you don't name it, you will not be able to tame it. This document is clear that we can't drive development unless we address the issue of critical infrastructure in road development, in rail development, in energy. And what I also find very interesting is that the document says that, unlike in the past where you stop ongoing projects, this document says they will finish the ongoing projects and initiate new ones, which will make Nigeria to achieve some of those goals we have set for 2020. It's very, very important, and I think it's important to know that. Now, once you name it, the possibilities that you'll be able to tame it and have a roadmap to get it done. And the word that is of interest to me is railway. I'm quite excited. I'm also based in Kaduna. Now I can go to Kaduna and come back from Abuja. And I think railway is extremely very, very critical. In fact, interestingly, if you check the record, the railway line that was laid by colonial administration started 1896 from Lagos to Kano, and it finished in a record time of 15 years. About almost 111 miles that time, about 1,000 kilometer long rail. And if you know the history of Nigeria, transformation in the 60s, 70s, it was linked to railway development. In fact, major towns like Makurdi, Kano, Jos, Enugu, Abakaliki. I know when I was going to screen in Port Harcourt, that's how I knew those cities, Enugu, Port Harcourt. It also leads to, towns development. Then railway discounts space in terms of costs. Is the best way to move capital and labor. And if you talk of textile, the whole miracle of textile development in the 60s, 70s was the role of the railway. If you go to some of our textile mills in Ikeja, you see railway line that enter the factory, used to bring raw materials and later on take the final product that's been produced. Same in Kaduna, you go to UNTL, in Kakuri, Nasarawa railway line. So I'm quite excited that we're reinventing railway, and it's highly commendable, and I hope we get it through. Also, about road development is quite refreshing to see the level of energy. And what really struck me is the huge capital outlay that we have seen, 2.7 trillion naira, and it's some president. But the only way I want to add here, and I think the lesson from this is that the reason why we had stagnation in the past is that there was this buzzword, especially under the structural adjustment program of the military government, especially the IBB government. There this buzzword that government has no business in business. And there was an assumption only private sector can drive development, and that led to a lot of stagnation. And now you can see the case of Lagos-Ibadan Express Road. You could see the limit, the assumption that if you do public-private partnership, private people will bring capital. The reason why Lagos-Ibadan Express was stopped was that the concessionaire or the developers couldn't raise the kind of capital. And I'm excited now that this government must lead in terms of financing. And you can see that if there is the will, there will be the way. The old school bond fund, 100 billion, and because private sector will also not come unless the state, the federal government, or government at all level also put the resources. And it's quite remarkable at that. But Rhoda, you also asked a question about the quality of the job being done. But before the quality, and I bear witness, I've seen some good quality roads, and I mean, Railway Night has really improved in terms of quality of services, the one I've been trying to join. But even quantity-wise, before we go to quality, and I think the Honorable Minister, while we are upbeat, we should also know there's a lot to be done. Because here we are talking of 200,000 kilometer roads throughout the country. Of course, federal government is doing its own side of the bargain because federal government holds about 18-20% of these roads. States also have their roads. Local government, in fact, a chunk of them are also owned by the local government. Yeah. Now, what I'm saying here is that as good Enugu, Port Harcourt taxis, the Abia, Uma here, Lagos, Ibadan, I think there is still a lot to be done. I'm now talking of quantity. And why I'm raising this point is that, and I've always been arguing, is that it's important that we try to have a bipartisan approach. In fact, we need a national approach to infrastructural development because the deficits are so huge. I mean, great 2.7 trillion naira, but you also know, if you run the numbers, we need double-digit trillions of naira, to face this infrastructural transformation. Now, to raise this pool of fund, I think there's still a lot to be done. So it's not just in terms of quality, but even quantity. I'm saying there are still many roads that need to be done. And we must get this clear. In fact, Lugard said that the whole history of material development of colonial administration was investment in transportation. Because you need to move people. And I think we are talking of 200 million people. Wait, you can't move us on keke napep. You can't move people on buses to go to work. Countries of our size, China, India, and also they have massive investment in a railway, which is the real thing to move thousands of. I mean, Honorable Minister, when I was going to school in the late 70s, 80s, I never knew what just to travel by road. From Ilorin, we used to go by rail. It's railway, and it was cheaper, it's easier, more secure. And today, even to travel to Kaduna, I think we're far more secure by rail. So what I'm saying here is that while progress is being made, and I acknowledge that very well, in quantity and qualitative terms, I think there is more to be done. And I think that this conversation will achieve more. Because you see, the country we are competing with, assuming we're talking of competition, China, they don't have the luxury of, say, this federal road. This is state rail, local government. In fact, I used to see in those days, some people put signboard to say, this is done by. So and I say, wait, is it Afghanistan that are moving on this road? Or Ghanaians, it's Nigerians. And I think what we should get there is now, it's not just infrastructure for infrastructure's sake, but infrastructure both as a means, as an end. But I mean, largely now it's a means to carry people to work, bring them back, so that we can add value for development. Now, on energy, Again, I also bear witness there has been some improved service delivery in terms of electricity and of course generation. I mean, the record level of 7,000 megawatts. But again, 2018 Nigeria, Rhoda, I think our benchmark should be countries of our size. I mean,
but then you should take into cognizance that we had below this.
Before now. I say where we are coming from, we've made progress. But what I'm saying here is that our dream was that by 2020, you know the sing song.
Projection.
Yes, we'll be able to talking of 20,000 megawatts. We'll be able to have uninterrupted power supply to drive industrialization. I'm from private sector, and I know one of the real failure factors was lack of electricity. You can't drive industrialization without uninterrupted electricity supply. So as good as we have had improved generation, some improvement in distribution, it's not over until our factories spend less capital outlay on generators, on diesel. Yes, this one that we're supplying, you can watch football, World Cup, that's okay. But to do uninterrupted industrial development, you need cheaper, sustained electricity supply,
all right,
which of course should be the way we are going. So what I'm saying here is that as we are making some progress, this thing must be seen that we still have a long way to go, and then we can't be over upbeat to relax. And I think the bottom line is that just the way Nigeria used to be one of the leading economies in the 60s, 70s, because this country, there was once a country that actually worked, and it was because we didn't have this kind of huge deficit we have in infrastructure. So also we must think ahead to see how we can achieve that. And if South Africa is generating close to, I mean, you know the figures, 40,000 megawatts. City of Tokyo is talking of 70,000 megawatts, just city of Tokyo. And that's all the cars, possibly all the brands, including wristwatches, they have no problem with power supply. In fact, the other day I was sharing with a big investor, and he said the kind of electricity supply that they have in Ethiopia here. Ethiopia has become a new industrial hub for Africa. While our textile is closing down here, it has resurrected in Ethiopia, South Africa too. The key to it is electrification. So the improvement that we're having now, even in industrial sectors, because of this improved energy supply. But you can imagine if we have it on a massive scale, the way we're expecting, I think we'll be able to get there.
We'll get back to you, and of course we'd like the Honourable Minister to also speak to some of the issues that you have raised. Honourable Minister, as you speak to these issues, I'd like us to also get into the specifics, and one of them is the second Niger bridge. Just as Kirian indicated earlier, of course that's of concern to him. That's an area where he comes from. That project has been on for several years now, but just recently we're beginning to see that work is ongoing. We'd like you to speak to us on the specifics, of course, the things that you have found on ground, the progress indeed, in depth, what is being, the success that has been recorded in that area, and of course some of the issues that Comrade Saremu has raised.
Thank you very much, Roger. I think I will start with some of the comments the comrade has raised on the issue of power. I think comrade has very conveniently forgotten that just before we came in 2015, the entire power sector had been privatized. And that as we speak today, it's private companies that are responsible for generating power in Nigeria. Of course, we don't have come in and cancel all the contracts that we made. We had to respect what we met on ground. So you can't hold the federal government responsible today for power generation because it's in private hands. We have about, I think, 11 GENCOs all over the country. But what the federal government has done is to intervene and ensure that these generating companies, improve. And like I said, we met 2,690 megawatts of power when we came in. Today, 3 years after, we're generating 7,000 megawatts of power. How did we do it? We did that by providing what we call, a power assurance guarantee. Because the complaints of the generating companies was that they could generate more, but the distribution companies could not pay them. So we put together a 701 billion naira guarantee available to generating companies, telling them that as long as you produce, federal government will guarantee your payment while we sort out the issue of distribution. And I think that is very important. Two, the only area which is completely in control of the government today is probably the transmission. And that again, you can see through our transmission expansion program and rehabilitation. We've raised transmission from 5,000 megawatt to 7,125 megawatts. I agree with Comrade that a country the size of Nigeria definitely needs more power than we have today. But then you must look at the context from which we are coming to be able to judge us, fairly. And I think I also have good news for the Comrade. The Abuja light rail system has been completed and will be operational, before the end of this year. And the first phase of that light rail will be linked to the airport, and the city center, and also they will be linked to the Abuja Kaduna rail line. Because I agree with with Comrade that you can move passengers and services better and more efficiently and cheaply using railway, and that is why we've embarked on this very ambitious project of not just standard gauge between Lagos and Kano, and also Port Harcourt and Lagos and Port Harcourt, but also we are rehabilitating the 3,500 kilometers network. And like I said, in the next 12 months, not only are you going to have an improved reduction in travel time between Lagos and Kano by train, but for the first time be able to resume scheduled and freight services on the rail line. And I think I also want to make the point that all the projects we are completing today are projects we inherited. From the dates that I've given you, whether it's the Second Niger Bridge, which was awarded in 2014, or the Ogbomoso or your road, which was awarded in 2010, or the Sapke irrigation scheme, which was awarded in 1998 under the then defunct PTF, or even the Enugu Port Harcourt road, which was actually awarded in 2014. It's clear that this administration believes that governance is a continuum, and that you must take over and complete what you have inherited rather than awarding new contracts. And I think this is one thing that is very important. Now, coming back to the Second Niger Bridge. Second Niger Bridge, from my records, was awarded on the 10th of March, 2014. So one was, I think that was supposed to be the when they laid whatever foundation they laid. But it was meant to be a private-public partnership, but it failed. And it took this administration to take the bull by the horn, realize that this thing will not work, and come in to fund it directly. And the first funding, if I'm correct, that was made available was about 2017. It was about 2 billion naira. The whole country was about 14 billion naira. When I was there on Wednesday last week, the amount of work done is very impressive. From the old Niger Bridge, because of the alignment, it's not easy for anybody to see what is going on the Second Niger Bridge. And that's why many people have come to say, oh, there's no work going on the Second Niger Bridge. But we went there physically, and Julius Baja has been up and doing. They've assured us that in the next 2 years they can hand over the project. Okay. There are 4 phases of the job that have to do with substructure, and 3 of them have been completed. The 4th one is 70% completed and will be handed over by end of July this year. And after which the real, the next phase will continue. And the next phase that will continue is actually the sinking of the, piles. And I've said again, of the 625 piles, there's about 320 have already been sunk. So the thing about a project like a second Niger bridge is that when these substructures are being done, you think no work is being done until where the superstructure are now being put. And don't forget that we are talking about a project that is about 12 kilometers, of which the bridge itself is almost 2 kilometers. And it's going to really be, it's going to change the entire socio-economic landscape of the South and the Southeast.
All right, Honorable Minister, let's go back to some of the issues that actually affected the previous contracts awarded. Now, these projects being awarded, are they being carried out with respect to the contractual agreements? Because we recall that you mentioned that most of the projects you are handling at the moment have been awarded by previous administrations, and that there was reason for such projects not being started before this government came to be. Now, the ones that you are handling at the moment, are they being followed based on the contractual agreement to avoid what happened with the previous administration?
I think what this government has done to ensure that no infrastructural project will suffer from lack of funding is that they've put together what is called a presidential infrastructure development fund, which I think is being managed by the Nigeria Sovereign Investment Authority. And this project is, this fund is starting with a seed funding of $1.3 billion. And now, this particular fund is meant to ensure that we would not be in the same kind of situation we were a few years ago. And you will also note that many of the projects today we are handling, we are using both direct, budgetary funding and also, bonds such as Cook bond that I explained to you. So what this government intends, our major objective is that we do not want to leave as much as possible behind any abandoned project. And I can give you an example. When we got to the Enugu-Lokpanta section of the Enugu-Port Harcourt Bridge, which is being handled by the CGC, the contractor, told us that he's not being owed 1 penny. So I think we paid about 7.8 billion out of about 32 billion, worth of the contract. The sector between Lokpanta and the Umahia Tower, also, of the 18 billion work that has been done, the federal government has paid them 13 billion, and we are still looking at the papers to make sure we, that we pay the rest. And the other sector too, which is the Umahia to Aba, which is another, 61 kilometers, we've also paid not just mobilization fee, we'll be able to also support them with about another 3.75 billion for Cook bond. So everywhere I have visited, funding has never been an issue. And that includes the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, that also includes the Oyo Ogumasho Expressway. And I remember in particular the controller, Federal Controller of Works for your state said that if this funding template continues, there is no reason why they cannot hand over that project in the next couple of months. So we are very, very concerned about funding. We do not want these contracts to go the way, it went in in the former years.
You've spoken extensively on the roads, the rail. Of course, you touched a little bit on power. But where are we on the Mambila Power Project and, of course, the water project in Katsina State?
The Mambila Power Project is probably one of the most ambitious projects we have embarked upon. And if you remember, this project started about 1970s. And it was only this administration that took the bull by the horn and awarded the contract and has started mobilizing the contractors. Yes, we know it's a very ambitious project, but the Mambila Plateau, the Mambila Plateau Power Project is very top on priority of the government. You talk about the water scheme. You see, there are about 70 ecological fund projects that have been executed, that have been completed by this administration, and I was fortunate, to be privy to represent Mr. President in commissioning one of them, which was in Oshogbo State. This is a flood control, erosion control, desilting program, which has now given a new lease of life to the residents. Because before then there used to be flooding in that area. So everywhere in Nigeria today, you see a lot of my colleagues on behalf of Mr. President, commissioning one ecological project or the other. And I've just told you about the water and irrigation scheme we went to commission in Sapke, which is providing water for the environment in Daura and Meadua. It's a 1 million per day, 1 million gallon per day water treatment plant. But in addition, it also has capacity to support 1,200 hectares of irrigated farms. And this is, you see, this is just one area that we just visited. My other colleagues are also, commissioning in other projects. So in the key areas of water, power, roads, rail, bridges, dams, we have, we have a good, record.
Honorable Minister, actually, in the course of this conversation, if we have the time, we could talk about dams too, because they're very, very important, especially when it concerns water. You're still watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA, and our guests are the Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, who has been reeling out all the activities of government with respect to infrastructural development. We also have Comrade Aremu, the General Secretary of the National Union of Textile and Garment Workers of Nigeria. For now, we'd like to look into what Nigerians are saying, those who have been able to respond by way of tweets to see how their impression about what is on ground.
The first one is from Akeju Olagbaju. It says infrastructure is considered to be easy business and the economic life of the citizens. It's a high-cost investment, and I wish that private sector would assist the federal government rather than leave it alone for government to fund.
Victor Hiosuma says the federal government has made tremendous efforts in infrastructure development. They have spent trillions in the past 2 years. The Bini-Okene road dollarization is ongoing, but it needs more funding as the Bini-Ahor phase is slow. It's only security that is now needed.
Festus Akimboyewa says that there is construction of big capital projects on in Nigeria, shows that President Muhammadu Buhari's government is investing in infrastructural projects.
All right, and Godwin Johnson, I must commend the federal government on the continuous process of governance in infrastructure rules, especially. But one area I'm not seeing anything is power. Of what use is 7,000 power generation if same cannot be distributed? And at this point, let's bring in Comrade Aremu once more. I know you've been itching to say something. Let's hear from you.
Yeah, I was just thinking aloud, and since we're having this kind of conversation, and I listened to the Honorable Minister very well, and let me commend him for the details. It's amazing. I mean, because these are issues that cut across a couple of ministries, and for him to roll out some of these commendable effort by the federal government, for me, is quite refreshing, and I've been quite educated. Now, I was just thinking aloud to say that if you look at those two important areas. I mean, you've mentioned a number of roads development that have taken place, but the two that capture my imagination is the second Niger Bridge, and of course the Ibadan Lagos expressway. And you know, you could see that the federal government had thought outside the box for us to record that tremendous progress, because the assumption, as the minister said, was that it was supposed, especially Niger Bridge, supposed to be second Niger. In fact, both of them were supposed to rely on public-private partnership, but the private sector failed, couldn't deliver the huge resources. Now, I'm just thinking aloud, since we also got some questions now dealing with energy. I think with the energy, because the minister is not casting iron, this so-called privatization. Because what we have seen now is not even privatization in the case of electricity, it's deprivations. You know, I mean, there have been a lot of demonstrations against the Genco, discos, you know, and you also know even the unofficial demonstration, even by the minister. I mean, Fashola has been doing a wonderful job. He has his own litany of, you know, frustrations or, you know, woes with the fact that his hands are tied because we've already privatized this. Now, the point I'm raising is that it's the government that has the responsibility to deliver the product. And I think that what we have done with the case of the roads, I think we should also think outside the box and see how we can rescue, especially the respect to generation and the distribution, you know, of electricity. I'm saying this because the problem of metering, the problem of financing, now we give a lot of money to some of these GENCOs, it's not reflected even in pricing, and then you don't give services, then the prices are so prohibitive. And let me come back to even industrial sector. I was shocked, and this is a critical issue now in the textile industry in particular, and I guess it affects other sector. The federal government, through some concession, reduced the price of gas for GENCOs and discos. In fact, charging them $2, you know, per cubic, if you get the measurement of the gas. Now they are charging other sectors $7. I don't know how to communicate, because gas is also critical in firing our plants and to reduce our costs. And now we have been struggling to say that concession must be given to critical sectors like textile, which employ a lot of army of labor. So what I'm saying here is that the pricing, I think government has to intervene, extremely very, very important, the funding, and they should hold these so-called private operators accountable. And where they don't do so, we should review the contract.
All right.
You know, if I wholesale reversal of the so-called privatization,
all right,
you know, and let government do what is doable so that we deliver the same way we are doing on road and on railway. Because you can see in all the areas of successes, government has been the one leading this development. And if there is a will, there will be the way.
The Honorable Minister is here, and of course, he's listened to what you have said, and obviously, I know that he'll do something about it. Honorable Minister, let's get your closing thoughts.
We can't even get meters.
I'd like you to, very briefly, sir, speak to some of the issues that he's just raised now.
You see, the government, especially the administration, is intervening. But we're intervening in a manner that we are also not going to discourage the private sector.
Yeah.
For instance, I said it was the intervention of this government that resulted in bringing generation from 2,690 to 7,000 megawatts. And another good news is that by the end of this year, there will be an extra 2,000 megawatts of power that will be added to the grid, which means we will be producing about 9,000 megawatts of power. And if within 3 years, we're able to raise power from 2,690 to 9,000 megawatts, you can see that our intervention is paying off. Even with the distribution, I spoke about DAP, which is the distribution, distribution expansion program, which we are working on with the discos to improve their capacity. Because the problem of the disco says that they are undercapitalized. And don't forget that the Yola distribution, we had to take over completely because they could not perform. They actually declared force majeure.
So there have been some,
So yes, the government will intervene, and I believe, yes, I agree with you that the government in this kind of economy will probably take the lead in many areas. But at the same time, this resources of government alone is not enough to drive a robust economy. So in fact, all our budgetary allocation is probably accounts for probably about just 10 to 12% of the entire economy, because we have a very robust economy. So our role as government is to provide this critical infrastructure that is going to encourage and provide an enabling environment for the private sector to come in.
All right, I was going to ask you very quickly, what should Nigerians expect from the Buhari-led administration in the next few years?
They should expect better infrastructural development, especially in the areas of power, which we already been showing, in the roads, in railway, in water, in dams, and overall, the economic landscape of the country would be much better.
All right, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Nigerians must have been educated, or rather informed, about these critical projects across the nation, as delivered here on this program by the Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed. I would like to appreciate him for his time, and of course for his being so punctual whenever it's time for him to appear on this program. Thank you very much, sir, for coming on this program.
You're most welcome, sir.
All right. And of course, Comrade Issa Aremu, General Secretary, National Union of Textile and Garment Workers of Nigeria, who's also the member of NEC of NLC. So it's been wonderful sharing your thoughts on this program.
No, it's a pleasure. I hope next time we also look at the job components of all this effort. How many workers have been employed, and the quality of the jobs. Very, very important.
We don't have time for this. We are going to have another program.
That would be good for development.
It's very important. You see, 7,000 jobs have been created just by the dual, the new standard grade. 4,000 jobs have been created, but Section 1 only of the Shagamu Ibadan Expressway. Another 2,000 jobs. So actually, we'll come back and
back to the next time. It's going to be a conversation for another day. And so let's take a break now. When we return, we'll have the second leg of our conversation on the program this morning.
Nigerians. Suicide bombers are not spirits. They are not ghosts. They are human beings like you and me. They live amongst us. They are your neighbors. They are your friends today, but terrorists tomorrow. So you must know your neighbor now. Security begins with you and me. Know your neighbor. Be vigilant. Be security conscious. Report suspicious persons, objects, and movements to the police and other security agencies. The security of our nation is a duty for you and me.
If you see something, say something. Nigeria unite against terrorism.
This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Hold it! Me! I don't come out my hand from oil bunkering.
General, what you gonna yarn? What did the yarn say? I don't understand though.
Because they spoil our water and our environment. And they cause our people serious harm. Militancy say, you know good. Me! I not do again Sam. Because why? Change begins with me.
General
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Now, beginning from tomorrow, the 3-day International Maritime Seminar will kick off in Abuja. The program is organized by the Nigeria Shippers Council in conjunction with the National Judicial Institute, which is aimed at bringing the nation's judges, lawyers, practitioners, and other stakeholders together for the purpose of enriching their knowledge. In addition, it is also aimed at equipping the participants with necessary skills to deal with the challenges of interpreting and applying international maritime laws in settlement of shipping-related disputes. And of course, joining us in the studio, we have a couple of guests in the studio joining us to discuss the seminar. We have with us Mrs. Tosan Edodomo Emor, a senior maritime lawyer practitioner and member of the planning committee. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for asking me.
All right, very briefly, let's first, we have another guest shortly, but then let's begin with you, Madam. What is the Maritime Seminar for Judges all about?
Well, the Maritime Seminar for Judges is about sharing knowledge on maritime law, bringing practitioners to speed, and also encouraging the whole spectrum of the maritime industry in knowing what is topical in maritime law. And it's really a period of sharing, and any time that sharing is necessary in law, it's always advantageous.
Okay, now Madam, lead us more into the necessity or the imperativeness of organizing this kind of seminar, and why are judges involved?
For the simple reason that maritime transactions are international, they are trans-jurisdictional, and so because of that, whatever we're doing in Nigeria is affecting people in other parts of the world. And so the judgments that are given in Nigeria also affect other people in the world. And for that reason, as Shippers Council, one of the statutory duties of Shippers Council is to organize seminars. It was thought that it was imperative to bring our judges up to speed in this area of the law, especially because before now, maritime law was not taught in Nigerian universities. So a seminar like this has always been an opportunity to expose the law to the judges, to the lawyers, and to every other active participant in the maritime industry in Nigeria.
All right. Sorry.
Okay.
Our second guest on this segment of the program is Mr. Ese Vong Tao. He's the Director of Legal Services, Nigeria Shippers Council. Sir, you're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you.
And let's get your own take on the relevance of this seminar, and why are judges targeted at this seminar?
Yes, the Maritime Seminar for Judges is primarily to update the knowledge of judges and justices of superior courts of record on maritime law. And as my colleague said earlier, maritime law was not taught in universities. So these judges, when maritime cases come before them, they had to go through rigorous researches to be able to get a grasp of the facts of the case. And that results into delay in dispensation of justice in maritime cases. And Nigerian Shippers Council's responsibility is to protect the interests of shippers on matters affecting the importation and exportation of goods to and from Nigeria. And of course, we know that delay in dispensation of maritime cases affects the shippers adversely, because as we know, in shipping, time is money. As a result of that, Nigerian Shippers Council decided to create this opportunity where judges and justices will come together, rub minds together, and get a flattering knowledge of the maritime law. And then that helps them in quick dispensation of justice, and also help in improving in the maritime sector and the fortunes of shippers.
I was going to ask you, who are the categories of people expected to attend this conference, and can anybody just attend? Is it fee-free, you know, or if it's not something that is free, how much is being paid to attend?
Yeah, the seminar was primarily aimed at judges of the Federal High Court, justices of the Court of Appeal, and justices of the Supreme Court, but it was later expanded to incorporate justices and judges of the state high courts, maritime practitioners, policy makers, legislators, and other operators in the maritime industry, such as shipping companies, terminal operators, and other people that operate within the maritime industry. The seminar is open to every person that wishes to, who has interest in maritime matters. And it is a fee-paying seminar, but the fee is just a token of just 10,000 naira.
Okay, from Madam, aside from this maritime seminar for judges, are there similar seminars basically for sensitization of other stakeholders in the maritime sector? Well, of course, what about the lawyers, you know, not just the judges, what about the lawyers who may also take up some maritime cases, right? So is it limited to just the judges?
No. Lawyers are free to attend. In fact, like my colleague said, not only lawyers, but anybody at all who has interest in maritime is free to attend. So the attendance cuts through the wide spectrum of the maritime industry. So lawyers, people who work in insurance, marine insurance, freight forwarders, people who work in shipping companies.
Are they invited?
I mean, the invitation is open, yes. Everyone is invited.
I was going to ask you, this has been a yearly thing.
Yes.
What impact has this had on the judiciary or adjudication of justice thus far over the years that you have been holding this seminar?
The effect has been tremendous. First of all, the point of sharing knowledge, especially because maritime is international. So anytime that we have an occasion to rub minds, to share knowledge with practitioners in the industry and people from other parts of the world, it is important. And it's important for the adjudication of justice, because over time, the judges who dispense, who are active in maritime law, like at the Federal High Court, are now more knowledgeable, and even at the Court of Appeal. So our jurisprudence in maritime law is expanding. So that means that, I mean, in the Western Central African sub-region and even other parts of the world, judgments of Nigerian courts are being quoted. And so what we're doing in the courts in Nigeria is being noticed elsewhere. So it's an improvement, it's development, and it's dynamic.
All right, Mr. Von Tau, how will this seminar impact positively on the ease of doing business in the maritime sector?
Yes. The seminar is going to lead to expeditious dispensation of justice in maritime cases. That alone leads to an improvement in trading. It improves on international trade. Cases are going to be dispensed very fast, and it makes it easier for businessmen, investors to do business in Nigerian ports. And to add to the impact of the seminar, there is a sort of interregional integration that is coming as a result of this seminar, because the seminar is now attended by participants from other West African countries, and also it will lead to unification of maritime laws and international trade laws, which in turn will make doing business across the borders very easy. So that is how it affects the ease of doing business in Nigeria: expeditious dispensation of justice in maritime cases, and then integration of maritime laws, unification of maritime laws, which is cross-border business in West African sub-region.
If maritime law is something that has to do, it's a business that has to do with, of course, cross borders, isn't your council considering making your seminar not just a Nigerian thing, but an African maritime seminar?
Indeed, it is already an African maritime seminar.
Okay.
And now the name is International Maritime Seminar for Judges.
Okay.
Last year, for example, we had judges coming from Ghana, we had from South Africa, Sierra Leone, Liberia, and the Gambia. So this year, we hope that more countries will participate. So it is indeed already African. And it's very interesting to note, too, that what we're doing here is now being copied in other countries. For example, Ghana already has its own maritime seminar for judges, and I have had an opportunity of speaking at that event, too. So it is already an African maritime seminar for judges.
Now, what are the specific areas that this seminar is going to address?
this year's seminar is specifically going to focus more on piracy. We know piracy is a problem that has agitated the maritime community for a long time. The seminar is going to focus more on piracy, though there are some other specific areas that the seminar is going to tackle. We have, the seminar is going to introduce a new liability regime for the carriage of goods by road, rail, and inland waterways. This is an area where our laws are not very much efficient in. And then also, we are going to focus on other issues that relates to conventions that are coming, conventions that are going to be made, so that Africa and Nigeria will be prepared to take a position beforehand, before the convention comes into being. That is a convention on the recognition of judicial sale of ships. We also have a focus, we are also going to focus on the applicability of international treaties in Nigerian laws.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Von Tov. Finally, let's get the final thoughts of Mrs. Etosan Emo. When are you starting? Where is it taking place? And what's your word, your final thoughts for Nigerians who are watching on this conference?
Okay, the event starts tomorrow.
Okay.
And it's from tomorrow until Thursday.
Okay.
It's at the Sheraton Hotel. Starts at 9 o'clock every day.
Okay.
And we would be pleased to have everyone there, everyone who participates in the maritime industry, or anyone who is really interested in expanding their knowledge.
You have a
in
theme
the
for
area.
this year? You have a theme for the convention?
Do we have a
conference?
theme?
No, we don't have a theme for this year convention because it cuts across a lot of subjects. Okay. So we didn't want to have a theme. The committee decided not to have a theme so that it will not be restricted. You know, when there is a theme, everything will be tailored towards the theme. So it is open. But the different issues, subject matters are going to be tackled, each going to be tackled seriously, especially the issue of piracy, because we are going to have a panel of discussants coming from all over the world, from International Maritime Organization, from Ghana, from other places, and within Nigeria. So we don't want to have a theme that will box us into
a corner.
Yes.
All right, Mr. Von Tau, Director, Legal Services, Nigeria Shippers Council, we thank you for sharing your thoughts on this program with respect to the Maritime Seminar for Judges. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much, and you are hereby invited to the seminar tomorrow.
We were invited.
You said it's 10,000 naira.
Well, we waive the fee for you.
You waive the fee for us.
Yes.
Okay. Mrs. Tosin Edodo Emora, Senior Maritime Law Practitioner and member of the Planning Committee. Thank you, Madam, for coming.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right. This is Good Morning Nigeria. And day 19 of the Russia 2018 FIFA World Cup rounded up with former World Cup champions Spain and Denmark eliminated from the competition. Let's now join our sports correspondent for more details.